Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 2025 Keep On Listening Awards, the KOLAs, the 10 best recordings of the year. And unlike all of those other stupid award things given out by other publications and magazines and whatnot, these happen to be true and real. In other words, they matter. Why do they matter? Well, because I say they do. They matter because these really are the best recordings of the year, or at least 10 of them. Some people may have some other opinions, but yeah, who cares about other opinions? I actually thought going into this year that we were going to have some problems. It seems to me, and this is just a very general impression from all the stuff I got, I mean, there's no diminution of product coming out. In fact, there may even be more. I mean, if you include all the stuff on YouTube and videos and downloads and streaming things and whatnot, it's a deluge. It really is. But the quality is less. And I've been thinking about, why should the quality be less? Well, I mean, when the year started, I really thought I'd have trouble coming up with 10. I really, really did. It was a pretty dire beginning of 2025. But things got a little better as time went on. So most of these are a good batch, maybe half of them, stem from the latter part of the year. But I'm just a little bit puzzled by the ordinariness of what's getting released. I think probably the problem is that there is no longer a population of knowledgeable, educated A&R, that's artist and repertoire people, at major labels. There's no winnowing process to decide whether something's good or something isn't good. All that's happening is that performing arts organizations are recording everything live. Chamber music people are doing stuff in their bathroom or wherever they play, and they just record it and they toss it out. And either it shows up as a video on YouTube or on some format like that, or they pay a label, and all of the labels are doing this now, to release their stuff. They get some funding, they make a record, the labels say, give us X amount of dollars, and we will release it on our label. Instead of the label saying, gee, here's a catalog, this is the repertoire we need to fill these gaps, we want these great artists, we're going to make studio recordings of these great artists under controlled conditions, and we're going to keep doing it till we get it right, and it's going to be fabulous, and if it isn't, we're not going to release it. I mean, that was sort of the way it used to be. Now it's not like that at all. Now you have the inmates running the asylum, and people are good enough technically that they can give you a virtually note-perfect performance of just about anything on the first run-through, or to be patched together from a series of live concerts. And that's it. Out it goes. Whether we need it, whether we don't need it, whether it's any good. And the result is just a massive flood of mediocrity, of decent workaday performances, things that if you went to see live, well, maybe you'd be happy because it's fun to go see things live, and you'll be swept up in the moment. But they don't deserve to be preserved or released, and they don't deserve the moniker of a label that had at one point in its existence a certain quality image. That seems to be gone. And so it's harder and harder to separate the wheat from the chaff. However, I happen to be an excellent wheat separator, I think. And, I'm not worried about chaff so much. So here then is the wheat, the 10 best recordings of 2025, or I usually say 10 of the best recordings, because I limit it to 10. And yes, there are other things that were worthy of consideration. So it's not like, the world is coming to an end. But these are really, really good. That I guarantee, 100% guarantee. First, Dvořák, Symphony No. 7 and Scherzo capriccioso with Bernhard Haitink and the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra on BR Klassik. Now, all these, by the way, are listed below this video, so you don't have to worry about knowing what they are. You can just look at the list. This is a fabulous Dvořák 7th. And, Haitink did very little Dvořák. He seemed to have not much feeling for Dvořák. The 7th is, of course, known as the most Brahmsian of all the Dvořák symphonies. Haitink recorded it earlier, really early in his career with the Concertgebouw, a decent performance, but this one has more fire and more passion and more intensity. It's really a superb performance of a glorious work. So that was really quite a pleasant surprise. Next, Tchaikovsky's Manfred Symphony. This was a recent video we did with the Ural Philharmonic Orchestra under Dmitry Liss on Fuga Libera. The Manfred Symphony is notorious for being absolutely impossible to pull off 100% successfully. And this is, wow, what a terrific performance. Very well recorded. The orchestra is on top of its game. Liss is a passionate Tchaikovskyan who seems to, not take the work so literally as to make it dull. He knows what parts need a little help, and he supplies it in spades. It's a fantastic performance of, I think, a fabulous but difficult work. And hearing it, coming from this source was a shock. But my goodness, it's well done. And I was thrilled that there's finally a couple of Manfreds out there. This one and Yurovsky's and, and a couple of the older ones that are starting to build a decent discography for a piece that's just been trashed. Oh my gosh, on disc. So that's great. That was absolutely wonderful. Next, the Brahms piano quartets numbers 2 and 3 with Christian Zimerman, Nowak, Budnik, Okamoto on DG. Oh, this is marvelous. Every so often, we remember the glory days of the major labels, when they had really major artists and they followed them in whatever repertoire they did, and they made sure that they were selectively releasing superb recordings. Well, I was nostalgic and sad at the same time because it's a fabulous performance of the Brahms piano quartets, which are magnificent works, especially the third. The third is just devastating. But if you don't know them, you should hear them. They are some of the richest and most musically fulfilling pieces that Brahms ever wrote, and uninhibited. They're just marvelous. But it was sad because there aren't that many major artists making recordings for major labels. There are a lot of very, very good artists who may make good recordings on occasion, but the circumstances just aren't there anymore to cultivate and support major talent. The labels have no money to invest in it. They're not going to actually spend, make an investment in the careers of these artists and record them in the things that they do best. Christian Zimerman is just there. He's hanging on. And so many other artists, Martha Argerich, they're getting older. They have famous names because the investments were made in the 70s and 80s and 90s. But for the past 20 or 30 years, it's been nothing. Crickets chirping coming out of the major labels. And every so often, one of these big artists will make a record, and everyone will jump up and down and go, yeah, big artist, major thing. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they aren't. Martha Argerich hasn't been so hot lately, but Christian Zimerman is extremely selective in what he does. Extremely selective. He doesn't make a lot of recordings. He's very careful about the ones he makes. Some of them are a little bizarre, like, that Chopin piano concerto thing where he had that sort of cult-like symposium and they worked on every single note individually until they were all perfect. And that created a very strange and somewhat lifeless coupling of Chopin piano concertos that was still amazing for what it was. But then, of course, since that happened, we've discovered that these, cult-like Svengali music projects can happen very easily. Then everybody from what's his name, Rene Ballat and Karensis, and these people who, kidnap a bunch of artists, lock them up for a few weeks, starve them to death, and then make a record. So, Zimerman happily only did that once, and his recordings since then have been, uniformly pretty fantastic. So, it's great to have wonderful chamber music, which I'm sure Deutsche Grammophon has no idea at this point in its career how to sell, and it's a fabulous record. But like I said, it's more representative of the passing of the old guard than anything new and promising. Next, rare repertoire. I love rare repertoire. We're doing lots of rare repertoire because it's so fantastically exciting to encounter new and wonderful music. De Hartmann, yes, his Symphonie-Poème number 1. Just call him Hartmann, but I call him De Hartmann because there's Karl Amadeus Hartmann, the German composer, who's absolutely wonderful too. But this way that it's D. Hartmann. He was cool. Remember, he's famous for transcribing all the tunes by Arthur Gurdjieff, or whatever his name was, the mystic guy in any way. But he was also a really, really good composer. His Symphonie-Poème number 1 and the Fantaisie-Concerto for double bass and orchestra with Leon Bosch, double bass, the Lviv National Symphony Orchestra of Ukraine under the redoubtable Theodore Kuchar, who couldn't make a bad record if he tried. He's just a fantastically musical conductor, and he can put over strange and interesting and wonderful repertoire as though we've known it all of our lives, and he has, or seems to have. It's on Toccata Classics, and it's fantastic. Really, a guy, Thomas de Hartmann, is really a guy you want to know. It's fin de siècle, Russian decadent, and I think that's all we need to say to, signal its universal appeal. It's lots of fun. Big, huge, exciting, gorgeous, wonderful stuff. Definitely a find, a major discovery. And that was from the beginning of last year, or this year, or just the end of the previous year. I don't, draw hard and fast lines at New Year's, because recordings come out in the last couple months of the year, and they need time to sink in, and we'll talk about them in the following year. In fact, I've already started the list for 2026. I've got a few titles on it, but there's no point in doing them now because we just talked about them. So, we'll wait a year and bring them back, see how well they weather. Anyway, so that was fabulous. And then more chamber music, and this was quite recent. The Korngold String Quartet, Sextet, and Piano Quintet with the Pacifica Quartet on CD. There aren't that many complete recordings of Korngold's chamber music, or, chamber music for ensembles, or music for chamber ensembles, whatever you want to call it. And they're very good works. They really are. And it's important that Korngold be seen as a whole for the marvelous composer he was. Everybody draws sort of a line of demarcation between his Viennese works when he was like a kid and the stuff he did when he went to Hollywood during the Second World War and afterwards. But the truth of the matter is it's all of a piece. He was born with a fully formed musical voice. He was that kind of a prodigy. So, there's no reason to make these artificial distinctions. And these chamber works are really rewarding and worth getting to know. And the Pacifica Quartet is fantastic. And CD makes gorgeous recordings sonically. It's definitely one of the major releases of the year. Also, a fabulous release, John Alden Carpenter's 3 ballets on the Boston Modern Orchestra Project and Gil Rose on their own label. This is one of the most fabulous and enterprising contemporary music labels in existence. BMOP, B-M-O-P. They've got all kinds of fabulous American classical music stuff that we've been waiting for centuries to hear. The complete Lucas Foss symphonies and David Del Tredigi's Final Alice, and all this cool stuff that we only had flickers and bits of previously. It's really, really wonderful. And the Carpenter ballets are terrific. Crazy Cat is a jazz ballet. The Birthday of the Infanta, good heavens. We all know that story, right? Zemlinsky wrote an opera about it. Schrecker made a ballet pantomime about it. And this doesn't sound like any of them. It's a wholly original and wonderful piece based on that well-known creepy story about the little hunchback dwarf who the little princess thinks is merely a toy, and who dies of a broken heart when she treats him as such. It's a real fin de siècle, decadent piece of fun and frolic. And then Skyscrapers, modern, urban, snazzy, wonderful American music from the first decades of the 20th century. Wonderful performances, wonderful sonics, absolutely first-rate music. Carpenter was a really good composer. Remember, he wrote Adventures in a Perambulator, one of the most delightful suites anybody ever heard. I mean, he was talented. And his music deserves to be performed regularly. And so it was a thrill to see these ballets coming out, in a collection. That was major stuff. And, oh, yes, 2025 was the Ravel year. It was a Ravel year anyway. And, there was tons of Ravel, but the problem with Ravel is that it's all been recorded, all of it, very well, many times. And it's very, very hard to make a splash. And there was a lot of mediocre Ravel popping up, especially, sets of the complete piano works, which all fit on 2 CDs. I mean, basically, any pianist with chops could, set up a pair of microphones wherever his piano is or her piano is, and they're off to the races, and out it comes. I've got Ravel discs of piano music sitting on my desk, right? I'm staring at 3 of them. They just keep coming. And everyone wants to take advantage of these anniversaries. But what happens, of course, is that, first of all, nobody really cares that there's an anniversary. I mean, nobody really knows about it. And there's nothing we're really going to do about it with a composer like Ravel. The industry isn't going to do anything about it. And so they all kind of cancel each other out. And you wind up getting deluged with piles of mediocre Ravel discs. There's nothing more miserable than mediocre Ravel. I mean, because he was such a perfectionist and so highly polished and so sophisticated in everything that he did. Every note that he wrote mattered. And so to hear all of these sort of work-a-day Ravel things, it's like a crime. It really is. But there was one project, well, there were a couple, but one project particularly that I think really celebrated the Ravel anniversary. It was the complete works with piano, featuring primarily François-Xavier Poisat piano on the Aparte label. This was 6 CDs because you got all the piano music, all the chamber music with piano, all the piano duos, all of the concertos, and all of the vocal works, the songs with piano. So it wasn't just your same old Ravel collection, not just the usual 2 discs of piano stuff that we hear 400 times. There were some things that were not performed every 10 minutes. The vocal stuff isn't terribly well known, or at least some of it isn't. And we had wonderful performances of the 2 concertos. Really first-class, intelligent, thoughtful musicianship. And it was very, very exciting to have that release come out. So if you can find it, I mean, it's not a major label, not always easy. I mean, when I first heard about it, Jed mentioned it to me, Jed Distler, the piano maven. And he said to me, this is really good, you should hear it. And I tried to get it. It took me a couple months to be able to actually get my hands on the damn thing. I mean, so I don't know. I don't know what the situation is, but it's a major project. It was really the major project of the Ravel year, and a worthy one, because there were some lousy ones, which we will be talking about, actually, in the Avoid Like Death Awards, which are coming soon, so don't worry. Also, fabulous and wonderful and chamber music-y Hinastera string quartets with Kira Duffy soprano and the Miro Quartet on pentatone. Oh, was this hot stuff. I mean, there have been a couple really good recordings of the Hinastera quartets, but they are marvelous works. They are, a couple of them are atonal, but I mean, like, who cares? Hinastera is so passionate. He's atonal expressionist, period, is just that. It's expressionist. The emphasis is not on the atonality, it's on the expression part. He writes these hallucinatory scherzos and anguished adagios and brutally rhythmic, vicious allegros. And, it's based on Argentinian folk music, no matter how dissonant it gets. And the string players are going insane. And, oh my gosh, it's marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. I mean, I don't want to listen to it every day. I mean, it's a little sort of lacerating, but good lacerating. It's refreshing. You get a good, slap in the face. Oh, marvelous. And they're fabulously well played by the Miro Quartet and wonderfully well recorded by Pentatone, a label which seems to suffer from a quasi lack of direction in places at times. I don't really understand what they're doing sometimes, but boy, was this a winner. So that's totally fabulous. Also fabulous, the French in Spain. This has some Ravel, fabulous Ravel. This is a wonderful collection, a good old-fashioned, slam bang orchestral pot boiler extravaganza, played like one, with the Buffalo Philharmonic under Joanne Falletta on Naxos. They can still deliver the goods. I mean, and they usually do. Really wonderful to hear a program of fabulously vulgar orchestral fireworks played with fabulous vulgarity and fireworks. I mean, thank God. You get Debussy's Iberia, Iber's Escale, and the two Ravel works, El Barada del Gracioso and Rhapsody Espagnole. And boy, are they exciting. I mean, finally, oh my gosh, they just rip. Even Iberia, which is actually a very subtle piece, it's late Debussy, and it's somewhat sparse. It has a vigor and a color and an unashamed, joy in making really wonderful sounds with a fabulous orchestra. That's we don't hear enough of that. There isn't enough joy in just playing great, colorful music and raising the roof. And that's what they do, especially in the Rhapsody Espagnole. My God, it's exciting. The concluding Feria, oh my goodness, it hasn't had that exciting a performance in decades. And it's wonderfully well recorded. It's a tremendous release. Absolutely tremendous. Give it a listen. Don't poo-poo it because it's, popular repertoire or anything like that. When you hear great playing and great interpretation and all that, it just restores your faith in humanity. And, it's still out there. The greatness, it's still there. And last, but certainly not least, our box of the year, the Charles Mackerras Complete Warner Classics Edition. 63 fun-filled CDs in this baby. Oh, I love it. I put it under my pillow at night and stroke it. And how long have we had to wait to have Mackerras's, diverse repertoire for all the labels he recorded for, because he'd record for anybody, boxed up by one of those major labels that had access to a substantial chunk of what he did, because these are all the recordings on HMV, Pi, Columbia Gramophone, Classics for Pleasure, EMI Classics, Virgin Classics, and Erato. It's all in here. 63 CDs. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Very, very respectable stuff. And, Telarc needs to do a box. Universal is hopefully doing a box. Hopefully. Decca needs to do a box. They've got all that Argo stuff they did, the Delius, the Elgar, the British music. It's just such wonderful, wonderful, wonderful conducting. There isn't a thing the guy couldn't do. When you say, what did he specialize in? Well, yeah, everybody says Janacek, Handel, but also Mozart, but also Beethoven. His Mahler's fantastic. His Stravinsky was amazing. His Delius is incredible. He could do it all. He was the complete package. One of the truly great generalist conductors, maybe one of the last of the 20th century. I mean, up there with the very, very biggest names. He didn't have the same career because he wasn't that kind of personality. You know, he was so focused on making the music and making music under conditions that were congenial to him. But he still managed to do an astonishing amount of stuff, and a good chunk of it is in this here box, which probably will last for like 10 minutes if it isn't already out of print. Get it while you can. I'm telling you now. I told you when I talked about it originally a few months ago. You must get it while you can, because you can't assume that any of this stuff will last. I could be totally wrong. Maybe it could all go streaming somewhere into the, digitalis field or whatever it is. But, where you can find it. But don't count on it. Just count on nothing. The one thing I've learned from this year is get it while you can get it, if you can, because there is no consistency out there, no long-term plan, no vision, no nothing. It's just the Wild West when it comes to finding repertoire and finding music and getting it. So please keep track of that. And keep on listening, friends. I'll see you all in 2026. And I'll be listening for the best of the best of the best, so I can tell you all about it. Take care.